Why was the ocean so silent when it was supposed to kill her? They had dragged her across the steel deck like discarded cargo, boots grinding her knees raw, wrists zip-tied behind her back until her hands went numb. The smell of diesel still clung to her skin, mixed with the iron of her own blood. Men laughed behind her, voices careless, cruel, and foreign. Paid contractors, not soldiers, not even believers in the cause they served. Just men who had been told she was disposable. She knelt there, forehead pressed to cold steel, the weight of the cinder block chained to her ankles already cutting off the circulation in her legs. One boot gone, the other dangling by a frayed lace. She fought for 2 days, given them nothing. No codes, no names, no map of the shipment routes that she had memorized like scripture. She was Commander Elise Ward, but to them she wasn't even human. Just leverage. And when leverage stopped being useful, it was meant to sink. The smoker leaned in close, his cigarette flaring bright against the night. He blew smoke sideways, never in her face. That small act of restraint made him crueler than the others. "Crab meat by dawn," he muttered, as if rehearsing a line he'd used before. The others laughed. No one used her name. That was the point, to erase her before the sea did. But she wasn't erased, not yet, not even close. The block scraped forward, dragged by calloused hands. Her knees screamed against the grating. She did not resist, not visibly. Her chest rose and fell in measured, shallow breaths. She was conserving oxygen, not surrendering. She knew what came next. They thought drowning was silence. They didn't understand the noise inside a trained mind. The last thing she saw was the black seam of horizon where the sky bled into the water. Then the sea opened beneath her. A boot pressed against the block. One push, one muttered farewell, and she was gone. The water swallowed her whole. The weight dragged her fast, pulling her deeper than her lungs were ready for, but she didn't panic. Panic wasted air. Panic killed quicker than pressure. She twisted her shoulders, letting the block pull her vertical, buying herself a sliver of space to move. 10 feet, 20, 30, darkness closing in. Her chest ached already, ribs clamped by the cold. Her fingers moved behind her back, blind but trained. She searched for the ridge sewn into her wetsuit seam, found it. The tiny ceramic blade, waterproof, invisible to scanners, forgotten by men too careless to know what mattered. She angled her wrist, pressed the serrated edge against plastic, and sawed. Every stroke bit into flesh as well as the tie, but she didn't care. DevGru divers had drilled this into her bones. If you can move one finger, you can cut your way free. Snap, the tie gave way. Her arms shot forward, blood rushing back in a wave of pain. She didn't fight it. Pain was information. Pain meant she was alive. She twisted, pulled her knees up, kicked hard against the block. The chain tore skin from her ankles as the weight sank faster. Blood bloomed upward, a red veil swallowed by the black. She clawed at her belt, fingers stiff, fumbling until she found the inflation sleeve. Yank. Co-2 hissed like a secret, enough buoyancy to buy seconds, not salvation. Her lungs screamed, darkness pressed closer. She counted the beats in her chest, 5, 6, 7, before her body betrayed her and convulsed. She kicked again, arms carving upward, every motion slower than the last. 35 feet, 40, then the water thinned. She broke the surface like a torpedo. Air tore into her lungs, ragged and burning. She coughed hard, salt filling her mouth. The night was endless, no horizon, no lights. The ship was gone. They hadn't even stayed to watch her sink. She treaded water slowly, conserving, her injured ankle leaking ribbons of red into the sea. The stars above glared cold and indifferent, scattered like broken glass across the black sky. Somewhere to the south, faint and wavering, she saw it, a flare's shimmer against the horizon. Oil field, maybe. 10 nautical miles, give or take. Distance she could measure. Distance she could own. Her body shook, muscles already locking in the cold. She stripped the cord from her wetsuit lining, tied it tight above her thigh to slow the blood loss. Her lips parted, whispering the first of her Sierra mantras, words she'd repeated in training pools, in dark rooms, in places where men thought silence could break her. Pain is noise. Noise is useful. Use it to think. Then she swam. Each stroke was deliberate, slow, controlled. 3 strokes, breathe, 3 strokes, breathe. She didn't fight the current. She used it, let it drag her sideways while she kept her angle fixed on the flare. Time folded in on itself. Her body felt both infinite and seconds from failure. She calculated her odds twice, 3 times. Hypothermia in 4 hours. 6 if she was lucky. Blood loss constant but not critical. 70% chance she wouldn't make it. She swam anyway. The ocean shifted beneath her. Cold deepened. Something moved where the water should have been empty. A tug at her foot, a bump against her hip, not current, not debris, presence. Then she saw it. 12 feet of muscle and hunger sliding through the water like a shadow come alive. Oceanic white tip, shipwreck shark, the kind that trailed bleeding survivors for miles. It circled her once, distant, then again, closer. She stayed vertical, made herself tall in the water. The voice of her seer instructor echoed in her head, "You're not prey unless you act like it." Her fingers fumbled for the knife strapped to her thigh. Grip weak but steady enough. Reverse hold. She kicked once, making herself larger. The shark veered, then looped back. Faster this time, testing. She hissed through her teeth, not fear, timing. When it lunged, she pivoted. The blade struck the gill slit, quick and precise. The shark thrashed, its flank colliding with her hip, knocking her half under. Salt water filled her mouth. She coughed it out, never letting go of the knife. It circled slower now, disoriented. She clipped her decoy flare, let it flash beneath the surface. The shark turned toward the false light. Then it was gone. Her chest heaved, heart pounding like a drum in a hollow cave. She survived again, not by strength but by discipline. She turned back to the flare, kept paddling. Dawn broke hours later, thin streaks of gold cutting the sky open. Her lips were split, skin gray, eyes swollen, nearly shut. Every breath was a war, yet she didn't stop. Not until she heard it, the low hum of rotors above the waves. She craned her neck, saw the black silhouette of a Seahawk cutting across the morning sun. Too high, too fast, but maybe, just maybe, they'd see her. She fumbled for her mirror, angled it toward the light. Flash. Pause. Flash, flash. She kept flashing, even when her hands sagged, even when her vision blurred. Inside the bird, someone caught it. A rhythm, not a buoy, not a wave scatter, a human. The Seahawk banked left, dropped fast. Elise kept signaling until her fingers refused to move. Then she let the mirror rest against her chest. The wind hit her like a slap, hot and alive. Rotor wash clawed at the waves. Shadows fell. Divers splashed down, closing fast. Hands grabbed her shoulder, strong, certain. Voices she barely heard, "U.S. Navy, you're safe." Her eye cracked open. One word pushed past her cracked lips, raw and certain. "Tracked vessel." Recognition snapped through the diver's face. Elise Ward. The beacon was real. Her body gave out then, limbs heavy, mind fraying. But her will stayed awake. She wasn't done. Not yet. Not even close. Why did she refuse to close her eyes, even when the world kept slipping away? The Seahawk's cabin was a storm of noise, rotors above, metal clanking beneath, voices layered over radios and heart monitors. They laid her on a stretcher, wrapped her in foil blankets, slid IV lines into her veins. She felt none of it. She only felt the vibration of the bird slicing through air, steady and relentless. A medic leaned close, his face streaked with salt spray. "Ma'am, stay with me. What's your name?" Her lips parted, dry and trembling, the sound barely formed. "Elise Ward, Commander." The medic frowned. "She's crashing, BP's tanking, 82/43. Another voice cut across. "We divert now, evac to Djibouti." Her hand shot out, weak but stubborn, clutching the medic's sleeve. "No, don't turn. Ma'am, you'll die if." She raised one trembling finger, pointed east toward the horizon. "Freighter, weapons, 2 hours." The cabin went still. The crew chief leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Proof." She swallowed hard, tasting blood in her throat. "Beacon, planted port hull, magnetic, still pinging." The sensor operator bent over his screen. Static danced across the display, but there it was, a faint, rhythmic pulse, a red dot inside the silhouette of a cargo ship. "She's right," he said quietly. "Telemetry's weak but stable." The pilot's voice crackled through the comm. "Say again, what beacon?" Elise forced herself upright, the medic's hands pushing against her shoulders. She fought him, her voice rasped like broken glass. "Classified Navy tracker, passive mag core, they don't know it's there. If you wait, they dock, offload, gone forever." Silence. Then the crew chief pressed his headset tighter. "Command, we have Echo 6 clearance on board, requesting intercept authority." The medic shook his head in disbelief. "This isn't how it works." "It is tonight," Elise said, eyes locking with his. "You keep me alive, I'll keep them from disappearing." The pilot banked east. The Seahawk roared lower, angling toward open water. She closed her eyes for a second, just a second. The world tilted around her, fever burning deep in her chest. When she opened them again, she asked for a pen. The medic hesitated. She jabbed her hand weakly toward him. "Coordinates before I forget." He pressed the pen into her hand, watched as she scrawled jagged numbers across the back of her skin. Rendezvous point, dock location, everything she remembered from overheard voices, from half-closed eyes in the darkness of her captivity. Her handwriting shook, letters colliding. She pressed harder, skin tearing under the ink. When she finished, she let the pen fall and sagged back against the stretcher. The Seahawk smelled of iodine, heat packs, and sweat. Her thigh throbbed under the splint. Saline dripped into her veins, warming her blood one drop at a time. She ignored it all. Her eyes stayed fixed on the crew chief's tablet, where the pulsing red dot danced against the outline of the freighter. "That's it," she whispered. "That's your target." The crew exchanged glances. They saw the gray skin, the shaking hands, the lips split with dehydration. They saw a woman half broken, half gone, and then they saw the steel in her eyes. "You're not just an analyst, are you?" one finally asked. Her gaze didn't waver. "Naval Intelligence Liaison, DevGru affiliate, Echo 6 clearance. A beat. That makes you my team now." The pilot's voice came again, lower, urgent. 2 hours to intercept. USS Colorado is repositioning. Submersible unit en route. Command says standby. Elise forced her body upright, ignoring the medic's curse. "I'm going on that sub." "You can barely breathe," the medic snapped. "You won't last an hour." She cut him off with a glare sharp enough to silence men trained for war. "Then you better make me last." The Seahawk dipped lower, skimming waves that shone silver in the rising moonlight. Ahead, the ocean shifted, a shadow surfacing like a leviathan come to breathe. The USS Colorado. It barely broke the water, sleek, silent, predatory, a shadow pretending not to exist. The Seahawk hovered above, rotor wash scarring the sea into concentric rings. A stretcher line dropped. Hands weighted below. Elise gritted her teeth as they lowered her. Cold air vanished, replaced by the warmer breath of the submarine. She was pulled through a narrow hatch, guided down a ladder into a world of greenlit consoles and muted voices. The Colorado's heart hummed steady beneath her boots. 2 SEALs met her in the control room. No questions, just nods, firm grips, respect in silence. She didn't need introductions. They saw her face, saw the wounds, saw the fire that still lived behind her swollen eye. That was enough. A junior officer handed her a towel and a packet of electrolyte paste. She tore it open, forced it down without grimacing. Survival was function. Pain was noise. Noise was useful. The executive officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, we were briefed in transit. You've got the beacon live." She nodded, tapping the tablet they placed in her hands. The pulsing red dot glowed like a heartbeat. "Still there, port side. They're skirting lanes heading west 3 degrees. Someone tipped them off." Rafe Morgan, Task Unit 24.5 commander, stepped closer. Broad-shouldered, eyes like flint. 6 men on my team, full SDV capability. What do you need? Elise didn't hesitate. Submersible delivery at 1.5 nautical, east approach. They'll expect boarding from starboard. I'll walk you through the interior. Containers block upper deck. No backup generator, cut power, they're blind for 45 seconds. One of the younger SEALs frowned. Ma'am, you were their prisoner. You counted seconds. Her swollen lip twitched in something almost like a smile. I counted everything. The room went still. Rafe studied her face for a long moment, then he nodded. You're riding in. She didn't blink. I planted the beacon. I have layout. If they shift cargo, I'll know. You'll need me. The medic at her side muttered under his breath. She won't hold. She'll hold, Elise said flatly before he could finish. The planning table lit up with a 3D schematic of the freighter. Red squares marked containers. A yellow dot pulsed near the hull. Elise reached for the digital stylus with trembling fingers and marked 3 red X's. Entry ladders here. Access hold here. Hostiles forward compartments. Confirmed 8 during detention, possibly 10 now. Contractors Balkan accents. Former military but sloppy. They rely on isolation, not discipline. Rafe's jaw tightened. We've got one shot. Her gaze met his, unwavering despite the tremor in her hands. Then don't miss it. The room absorbed her words like iron sinking into water. Orders passed quietly, efficiently. The SEALs moved with purpose. Elise leaned back for a moment, exhaustion tugging at her, but she refused to lie down. Not yet. She studied the schematic, replaying every corridor, every sound, every face that had tried to erase her. They threw me into the ocean, she murmured almost to herself. Now I bring the tide. No one questioned her, no one doubted. The Colorado's dorsal hatch opened, and the sea swallowed them whole. Twin SDVs slipped out like shadows, gliding silent beneath the waves. The freighter loomed above, a dark mountain cutting through moonlight. Elise crouched in the rear of the lead SDV, chest pressed to her knees, rifle across her lap. Every breath scraped her throat raw, but her hands were steady. Her eyes stayed open. Ahead the beacon pulsed, her beacon. Her heartbeat matched its rhythm. The mission had already begun. What kind of strength does it take to climb back into the same darkness that almost killed you? The sea pressed down on them with crushing weight, black as an unlit cave. The twin SDVs slid forward in silence, battery hums swallowed by salt and depth. 6 SEALs moved like extensions of the machines, controlled, deliberate, predatory. And wedged in the rear hull of the lead vessel was Elise Ward, chest strapped tight by pain, body screaming, mind razor sharp. She watched the water throb with faint bioluminescence. Every flicker reminded her of that night when she'd fought the ocean itself, lungs bursting, ribs cracking against the pull of a sinking block. Now she swam back into it willingly, not as prey, but as the storm it had made of her. 60 meters to intercept, Rafe's voice crackled softly through comms. Calm, steady, a man whose pulse never jumped higher than his mission required. Elise leaned forward in her mask, eyes narrowing through the viewport. The freighter rose ahead, a wall of steel and rust. To untrained eyes it looked like a mountain. To hers it looked like a map, every dent, every seam, every shadowed intake vent. She knew them all. She had been dragged across them, bleeding and blind, counting bolts, memorizing the rhythm of footsteps echoing above steel grates. Portside intake vent, she whispered through the mic. Her voice was soft, cracked, but steady. Midline hull seam, leads to ballast compartments. Last I saw, latch was unsecured. The SDV angled up, gliding toward the ship's underbelly like a ghost. The SEALs detached first, shadows breaking from shadow, fins slicing water with no wasted movement. Elise followed last, every kick of her legs a surge of fire through her injured thigh. She forced the pain down into the same place she'd buried hunger, cold, and fear. Pain was noise. Noise was useful. The vent loomed, rusted grill half corroded by salt. Elise reached out, fingers brushing the panel. Memory surged, 2 nights strapped to a pipe inches away, hearing water drip, hearing men argue about how long before she broke. That same panel had sung against her spine with every wave. She shoved the memory down, opened the latch. Water surged as the grill creaked. She slipped inside first. Narrow space, bolts scraping her arms, oxygen thinning. Behind her, the SEALs slid in without hesitation. They didn't question her leading them. Trust was silent, earned not by words but by the way she carried herself, broken body and all. The ballast cavity swallowed them, a chamber of stale water and dead metal. Elise pressed her palm against the interior seam, counting again. 2 meters right, ladder. She signaled with her fingers. The team followed her hand, not her voice. She reached the ladder and pulled herself up. Every rung tore at her shoulders, but she climbed anyway. Above, the hatch to the engine room loomed like a mouth. She placed her hand on the latch, counted silently to 5, turned. The hatch groaned open. Heat hit her first, thick and oily. The thrum of diesel engines rattled through steel. She surfaced from the ladder like a ghost rising from the floor. The SEALs spread out instantly, weapons raised, movements rehearsed to the edge of perfection. Elise pressed her back to a bulkhead, eyes scanning. The engine room was alive with noise but empty of people. That was worse. Guards should have been here. 2, maybe 3, rotating, but the floor was bare. Her breath slowed. Something's wrong. She raised 2 fingers, pointed left toward the shadow of a generator. The SEALs stacked silently. Rafe moved ahead, his rifle angled tight. Elise's eye followed every step. The last time she had stood in this room, she'd been dragged by her hair, knees slamming metal, men spitting laughter. Now she walked upright, rifle tucked, every movement deliberate. Her throat ached from more than thirst. They slipped past pallets disguised as grain sacks. Elise brushed her glove across one. Hard corners beneath burlap, ammunition tubes. She filed it away. Not yet. Focus. The stairwell appeared. She signaled stop, raised 3 fingers. 2 guards on rotation, sleep between shifts, cabins through bulkhead. Her whisper barely carried over comms. Rafe nodded, pointed. His men vanished down the corridor like breath into wind. Elise stood still, watching the shadows bend around them. A muffled thump, a choke, silence. Guards neutralized. She exhaled once, long and quiet. They moved on. Up the stairwell, each step groaning under boots, but the ship itself drowned the sound with its own heartbeat. Elise's thighs trembled with each lift, but she refused to falter. Every step was defiance. Every step was reclamation. The steel door to the main deck waited above. Wind rattled it from outside. Elise pressed herself against the bulkhead, breathing shallow. She whispered into comms. Alpha team breaching starboard. Bravo sweep perimeter. Confirm cargo integrity. Fire only if engaged. Rafe's reply came calm, immediate. Alpha stacked, go in 3. She counted silently. 1, 2, 3. The door blew inward. The SEALs surged through like water finding cracks. Suppressed bursts lit the dark. Sharp commands. No screams, just the dull collapse of men who never had a chance to react. Elise stepped through last, rifle angled low but ready. Wind clawed at her hood. Her right leg screamed, blood seeping through her bandages again, but she didn't limp. Couldn't, not now. The freighter's bridge loomed ahead, rusted tower, frosted glass glinting under moonlight. 2 shadows moved inside. Elise's pulse thudded steady. One shadow ran, the other didn't. Her breath hitched. She knew that silhouette, that walk. The man who had spat on her boots, who had tied the chain around her ankles, who had called her American like it was filth. Now his face cracked with disbelief. "You," he stammered. Elise didn't raise her rifle, not yet. She stepped forward, calm, slow. Every muscle in her body wanted to break him, to make him feel the weight of every moment she'd spent in the black throat of the ocean. But vengeance was noise. Mission was clarity. He reached for the console, panic button maybe, maybe nothing. She was faster. A boot slammed down on his wrist, pinning it hard. He gasped, her rifle muzzle pressed to his chest. "I told them not to shoot you," she whispered, voice low, words edged like steel dragged over stone. His mouth opened, searching for a plea. She didn't care. She ripped a zip tie from her belt, bound his wrists, shoved him into the chair, ankles lashed to the base. Hard, efficient, without ceremony. "Primary secured," she said into comms. Her voice didn't shake. "Bring manifest scanner. He's going to label every stolen round." Outside, the SEALs moved like a machine, bagging crates, logging drives, securing helipad for extract. The ship that had been a coffin now bent to their will. The sun breached the horizon, slicing gold across black waves. Elise stood on the bridge, wind in her face, blood dried at her temple. Rafe climbed the steps, eyes on her. "What's the call?" he asked. She looked out over the endless water. For a long moment she didn't answer. The ocean moved below, the same one that had tried to claim her, the same one they thought would erase her. Her voice came quiet but sure, "Sail it home." For the first time, the horizon didn't look endless. It looked possible. How long can a body survive when the mission refuses to let the mind rest? The freighter smelled of diesel, salt, and lies. Steel corridors echoed with boots, the muted thuds of crates being shifted, cataloged, tagged. The SEALs moved with surgical precision, clearing compartments, bagging drives, photographing manifests that had been hidden under layers of false aid shipments. Elise stood on the bridge, her rifle low, her leg throbbing like a nail hammered into bone. The wind whipped strands of her damp hair across her face. She blinked them away, eyes swollen nearly shut, but gaze locked on the endless horizon. The contractor sat bound to a chair at the console, wrists zip-tied, ankles lashed. His breathing was ragged, not from pain, he'd barely been touched, but from disbelief. He had watched her go overboard. He had watched the ocean close over her. He had told himself she was gone. Yet here she stood. "You should have sunk," he muttered, accent thick, words bitter. "You don't come back from that." Elise turned slowly, one eye catching him. "You don't get to tell me what I come back from." Rafe entered the bridge, helmet under his arm, eyes sweeping the space before resting on Elise. He said nothing at first, just let the silence settle like dust. Then he nodded toward the prisoner. "He talking." "Not yet," Elise said, "but he will." The contractor spat blood to the side, lips curling. "I don't fear you, you're half dead." Elise stepped closer, not fast, not loud, just steady. She crouched until her swollen face was level with his. Her voice came soft, almost kind. "That's what makes me dangerous. I don't care what it costs anymore." He looked away, the smallest tell she saw it. "Bring the scanner," she called over her shoulder. A SEAL entered, setting down a ruggedized tablet, infrared reader attached. He angled it toward the cargo bay feed. Stacks of crates lit up, heat signatures bouncing. Some hollow, some alive. Elise frowned. "Alive?" she asked. The operator zoomed in. Not animals, not machinery, heartbeats, faint, steady. Elise's throat tightened. "They're moving people." The contractor jerked against his restraints, panic flickering across his face before he masked it. Too late. Rafe's jaw clenched. "Human cargo." "Slaves," Elise whispered, bile rising. "Or leverage, both." Her chest burned with something hotter than pain. She thought of the block, the chain, the taste of diesel smoke in her mouth as men decided she was nothing. She thought of nameless souls trapped in metal below, waiting to vanish. "Where?" she demanded, eyes boring into the prisoner. "Which hold?" He stared at her, jaw tight. Then he smirked, blood staining his teeth. "Not your problem." Elise leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a blade's whisper. "They threw me into the ocean. Do you think I'll hesitate to throw you into the dark you fear?" He flinched, barely but enough. She rose, motioned to the operator. Thermal sweep again, deck by deck. The image danced across the screen. "Lower forward hold. 15. maybe 20 faint signals. Rafe swore under his breath, "We don't have manpower for extraction." Elise's hand gripped the console until her knuckles whitened. "We don't leave them." The room fell silent. The SEALs glanced at each other. She wasn't their commander. She wasn't even technically their mission lead. But her words carried a weight none of them could ignore. Rafe studied her face, bruised, bleeding, trembling on her feet and still harder than the steel around them. He finally nodded once. "We clear the hold." Orders rippled out in silence. Alpha shifted formation. Bravo redirected. Elise moved with them, rifle steady despite the tremor in her arms. The stairwell down to the hold reeked of rust and sweat. Each step creaked under weight. Elise's heart beat heavy in her chest, not just from exertion but from the memory of being dragged down these same steps, head striking metal, vision swimming. At the bottom, the bulkhead door groaned. Rafe signaled halt, then breach. The SEALs flooded in, rifles up, flashlights cut through dark. The sight froze Elise where she stood. Men, women, children, all shackled to pipe rails, skin gray from cold, eyes wide from fear. They flinched at the lights, too weak to cry out. 20 souls who had been packaged like freight. Elise lowered her rifle, slowly. Her throat constricted. She saw herself in their faces, not their lives but their erasure. People who no longer had names, whose captors had decided the sea or the silence would swallow them. Her vision blurred, not from injury this time, from rage. The SEALs moved quickly, cutters biting chains, thermal blankets wrapped, canteens pressed to cracked lips. Elise knelt beside a girl no older than 10, wrists raw from iron cuffs. She whispered softly, words she'd once whispered to herself. "Pain is noise. Noise means you're alive. Use it." The girl blinked at her, a flicker of recognition in the haze. Elise squeezed her hand, weak as it was. Behind her, Rafe's voice was grim. "We're over our limit. We can't carry them all." Elise stood, eyes burning. "Then call in Seahawk extract, multiple runs if needed." "That's exposure. Command won't authorize." Her voice cut sharp. "Then tell Command they can explain to Congress why 20 bodies were left in chains when we had them in sight." Rafe met her gaze. Something passed between them, challenge, respect, inevitability. He didn't argue again. The extraction began. One by one, shivering bodies were guided up narrow stairwells, lifted into waiting air. The Seahawk thundered above, rotors thudding, winches lowering baskets. Elise stayed in the hold until the last one was cut free, until her own legs buckled under her. A SEAL caught her arm before she hit the floor. "You've done enough," he muttered. She shook her head, voice thin but unyielding. "Not yet." When she finally emerged back onto the deck, the sky was burning orange with dawn. The rescued huddled in thermal blankets, eyes hollow but alive. The contractor sat still bound, sweat dripping down his temples now, smirk long gone. Elise limped toward him. She crouched once more, eye to eye. "You thought the ocean erased me," she said quietly, "but you're the one who's disappearing." His lips parted, a retort forming, but he stopped, because he saw it, in her swollen, battered face, in the steadiness of her stare. She wasn't bluffing, she wasn't broken. She was the tide that had turned. Behind her, Rafe's voice rose. "Colorado confirms, cargo manifest logged, weapons cache intact, extraction continuing. Next steps." Elise straightened, looking out over the sea, endless and merciless. For a long time she didn't speak. The wind whipped her hair, carried salt into her wounds. She breathed it all in. Then, softly, "This was never just about weapons. It's about what men think they can hide in silence." Rafe frowned. "You think there's more?" Her swollen eye closed, the other fixed on the horizon. "There's always more." The ship creaked beneath them, steel mourning its secrets. And Elise Ward, half dead, half reborn, knew this mission wasn't over. Not yet. Not even close. What if the victory you bled for was only a doorway into something darker? The freighter rocked gently in the swells, no longer a predator slicing through shipping lanes but a captive, its secrets dragged into light. The rescued huddled in blankets on the deck, the hum of Seahawk rotors still echoing above. SEALs moved with quiet efficiency, cataloging every crate, every drive, every hidden compartment. Elise stood at the rail, hands gripping rusted steel, knuckles bone-white under torn gloves. The horizon was sharp and endless, yet it offered no relief. She should have felt triumph, proof salvaged, lives saved, vengeance made real. Instead, she felt a hollow echo inside her chest, as if the ocean had swallowed more than blood. Rafe stepped beside her, helmet tucked under his arm. His voice was low, careful. "We've logged the manifests. Weapons, surplus, some marked U.S. origin. Command will tear this apart when we dock." Elise's gaze didn't move from the waves. Weapons don't move themselves. He studied her face, battered but unbroken. "You think there's another link?" She finally turned. Her eyes, still swollen half shut, burned with something colder than fire. "There's always another link." The contractor was dragged forward then, shoved to his knees between them. His restraints cut deep into his wrists, his face slick with sweat and salt. His smirk was gone, but defiance lingered. Rafe crouched, voice flat. "Names, roots, who paid for this?" The man spat blood into the deck. "You won't live long enough to use it." Elise knelt opposite, her battered body moving with slow precision. She didn't shout, she didn't threaten. Her voice came quiet, almost tender. "Do you know what the ocean taught me?" The man hesitated, eyes narrowing. She leaned closer, her breath warm against his ear. "It doesn't care if you beg, it doesn't care if you break. It just waits. And it takes. That's who you serve now, men who are nothing but waves. They'll swallow you the moment you're inconvenient." The flicker in his jaw betrayed him. Elise pulled back, eyes sharp. "Tell me who's tied your riding before it drowns you too." He stared at her, silence stretching long. Then finally words cracked through. "Manifest wasn't the only cargo." Rafe's eyes snapped to Elise. She held the man's stare. "Where?" The prisoner's lips twisted in something between shame and surrender. "Encrypted drive. My cabin, hidden in ballast piping. Codes, you won't break them." Rafe rose, signaling a team. 2 SEALs vanished down the corridor. Minutes later, they returned with a drive sealed in waterproof casing, edges scarred from hiding. Elise's pulse hammered. She didn't reach for it. Not yet. She knew better than to touch a snake before its head was pinned. Rafe handed it to the comms operator. "Get it logged, double encryption, satellite burst to command." The operator hesitated. "Ma'am, we don't have sat link until we surface." Elise's stomach tightened. That was too neat, too perfect. She turned to the contractor, voice steel. "Who knew I was on board before they grabbed me?" His smirk returned, faint but poisonous. "Ask your own command." The deck tilted beneath her feet, though the ship hadn't moved. For the first time since the block had dragged her into the abyss, Elise felt a chill not born of water or blood loss. Betrayal was colder than the sea. Rafe's eyes flickered to her. He saw it too. "You think he's bluffing?" Elise shook her head slowly. "No, he's seeding doubt, and the worst part," her throat tightened. "It worked." The drive pulsed red on the console, encrypted light mocking them. Elise stared at it, heart hammering. If command already knew, then this mission wasn't rescue. It was cleanup, and she wasn't supposed to survive cleanup. Her legs buckled, sudden and sharp. Rafe caught her under the arm, steadied her against the rail. "You need med evac," he said firmly. Elise forced herself upright, teeth clenched. "I need answers." The rescued stirred behind them, huddled masses wrapped in foil, eyes darting between uniformed men and endless sea. Elise turned toward them, gaze catching on the young girl she'd freed, wrists still raw. Their eyes met. The girl blinked once, slow, trusting. Elise's chest constricted. She looked away quickly, back to the horizon. "We sailed to Colorado, no sat burst, not yet." Rafe's brows knit. That's above. She cut him off, her voice low, unyielding. If command wanted this quiet, we don't tell them until we're ready to make it loud. The SEALs exchanged uneasy glances. Chains of command didn't bend easily, but Elise's words carried weight born of scars, not rank. Slowly, one by one, heads nodded. The freighter groaned, old steel mourning under sunrise. Elise stood straighter, every nerve on fire but her voice steady as the tide. They threw me into the ocean to erase me. They failed. She turned, eyes sweeping over the crew. Now we find out who wanted me gone and why. The encrypted drive sat between them, humming like a heartbeat. The mission wasn't over. It was only opening its jaws. What do you do when the enemy might be sitting in the same rooms that once saluted you? The drive pulsed faintly under red cabin light, small enough to fit in a pocket, heavy enough to sink a warship. Every eye in the Colorado's control room seemed to orbit it, though no one touched it. Elise stood just beyond, leaning against the table, one hand braced on the steel surface to keep herself upright. Her thighs screamed, fever burning her skin cold. Rafe's voice was even, but his eyes betrayed calculation. We surface, burst the feed, let command sort it. Elise's swollen eye narrowed. And what if command put me on that freighter to begin with? The words silenced the room. Even the hum of consoles seemed to hush. SEALs who had never flinched in firefights shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another. Allegiance was simple when the mission was clear. Doubt made everything dangerous. Rafe studied her face as if searching for cracks. That's a serious claim. Elise's voice rasped, but her conviction was steady. They knew my route, my cover, the handoff schedule. Only 3 channels had it, and contractors don't pay themselves. Someone higher signed off. The medic muttered from where he hovered nearby, checking her IV drip. You're delirious. Fever's making you paranoid. Elise turned her head sharply, fixing him with a stare that pinned more than bullets. Paranoia kept me alive in the water. Don't tell me now it's a sickness. The medic flinched, looked away. Rafe exhaled through his nose, rubbing the back of his neck. Even if you're right, we're soldiers. Chain of command isn't optional. Elise straightened, shoulders trembling from the effort. Chain of command is a noose when the wrong hands hold it. The words hung there, heavy as ballast. The comms operator broke the silence. Ma'am, encryption on the drive isn't standard. Double-layer, rotating cipher. Looks like a military-grade contractor wrote it. He hesitated, eyes darting to Elise. Could be one of ours. Elise's chest tightened. She felt the deck shift beneath her, though the sub was steady. Proof was no longer a whisper in the dark. It glowed red on the table, undeniable. Her lips cracked as she spoke. We don't send it up, not yet. We crack it here. The operator swallowed. That could take days. Then start now. Rafe's jaw flexed. You're asking me to put my men in direct defiance of command. Elise stepped forward, her body failing but her voice carrying like iron dragged over stone. I'm not asking. I'm telling you, if we surface and send this, we vanish. Maybe in the paperwork, maybe for real, but either way this story dies. And so do the people still chained in places we haven't seen. The room held its breath. Rafe's eyes narrowed. He was measuring not just her words but the weight behind them. Finally, he nodded once. We crack it. The operator bent over the console, fingers flying across keys. Algorithms spun, ciphers shifted. Time bled away, measured in the rasp of Elise's breath, in the tremor of her hands as she clung to the table. Her mind slipped in and out, fever dragging her toward the abyss. But every time her knees threatened to buckle, she whispered the mantra under her breath. Pain is noise. Noise is useful. Hours crawled. Then finally the operator cursed softly, got something. Lines of text flickered across the screen, fractured but legible. Routes, dates, coordinates. Elise's good eye scanned fast, her mind snapping awake through the haze. This isn't just one shipment, she whispered. It's a network, multiple freighters, different flags, all converging on the same coastline. Rafe leaned closer. Somali waters. Elise shook her head slowly, heart pounding. Further north, Mediterranean staging. The operator scrolled further. Elise's breath caught. A name flashed in the data embedded in clearance notes. Not foreign, not faceless. It was American. Her hand tightened on the table until her nails split skin. She felt the betrayal crawl under her ribs like ice. Someone she'd briefed. Someone who had signed her deployment papers. Someone who had smiled. She stepped back, vision swimming, the room tilted. The medic caught her elbow. "You need to lie down." She ripped free, voice breaking but fierce. "No, I need to remember what this feels like. Because the moment I rest, I start forgetting. And forgetting is how they win." The SEALs stared at her, some uneasy, some burning with the same cold fire she carried. Rafe finally spoke, voice low. "What do you want to do?" Elise turned toward him, her face pale but eyes alive with fury. "We follow the trail. Quiet, off book. We get proof that can't be buried." He tilted his head slightly. "That's not survival." Her lips cracked into something close to a smile. "I stopped surviving the moment they threw me overboard. Everything now is payback." The room went still again. No one challenged her. Above, the sea stretched endless, hiding secrets in every wave. Below, inside the belly of the Colorado, Elise Ward stood half broken, half reborn, her will sharper than the steel around her. The drive still pulsed, faint and red, a heartbeat, a countdown. This wasn't the end. It was the warning. What keeps a soldier moving when the body is already finished? The USS Colorado slid silent through black water, deeper than light, deeper than hope. Its hull hummed with the patient growl of nuclear power, but inside the control room the air was thick with unease. Elise Ward stood leaning against the plotting table, her left hand pressed hard into her thigh where the splint couldn't stop the ache. Fever prickled across her scalp, sweat cooling too fast against pale skin. The drive glowed faintly on the console, still red, still pulsing. It was proof of rot buried deep inside the system she'd once believed unshakable. Rafe moved beside her, his broad frame steady, his voice low. "Mediterranean staging. You're saying this isn't about smuggling surplus." Elise's good eye fixed on the horizon map flickering on the screen. "It's about movement. Weapons, people, intelligence. A pipeline. And we've been guarding the door while they've been building the house." The SEALs around them shifted uneasily. None spoke. None needed to. They all knew what it meant. Betrayal wasn't somewhere out there. It was woven into the fabric they wore. "Command will never let us chase this," Rafe said. "Not anger, not dismissal, just fact." Elise's voice rasped, but it cut sharp. "Then we don't ask." The room held its breath. Rafe studied her. She looked like she should be lying in a hospital bed, wrapped in heat packs, tubes feeding her blood and fluids. Instead she stood, jaw clenched, eyes alight with something fiercer than life. "Off book means off support," he said finally. "No resupply, no extraction net." Elise's lips cracked into the faintest trace of a smile. "I swam 10 miles bleeding with a shark at my heels. I can live without extraction." One of the younger SEALs muttered under his breath, "That's not living." Her gaze cut to him, steady and hard. "You think I came back from the ocean to live?" Silence again, heavy, honest. The Colorado's captain entered then, his face lined, his voice even. "We're holding position. Command's last order was to maintain until further instruction. Do I take it you intend to break that?" Elise straightened, her body trembling but her voice steady. "I intend to stop pretending command still holds the rope." The captain's jaw flexed. For a moment, Elise thought he would refuse. Instead, he studied her face, scarred, swollen, still unyielding. Finally, he nodded once, clipped. "If you're wrong, Ward, you'll hang us all." Her throat tightened. She swallowed pain. "If I'm wrong, I'll hang first." Decision sealed. The Colorado angled north, its bow slicing toward the Mediterranean like a knife hidden under black cloth. Hours blurred. Elise sat on a narrow bench in the crew quarters, a canteen sweating in her hand, untouched. Her mind raced too fast for sleep. The girl's eyes haunted her, the one she'd freed from chains, wrists raw, blinking up in trust Elise wasn't sure she deserved. Saving her had felt like pulling her own younger self from the water. But how many others were still out there? How many chains still waited in the dark? Her chest tightened. She pressed a hand to her sternum, not for pain, but to anchor herself. Memory pressed in: the kick, the fall, the water swallowing her whole, the silence that should have been death but became rebirth. She closed her eyes, whispered the mantra again, barely sound. Pain is noise. Noise is useful. A shadow shifted. Rafe leaned against the bulkhead across from her, helmet at his feet, eyes steady. "You should be down in medbay," he said quietly. She forced a dry laugh. "And let someone write me out of the story? No." He tilted his head, studying her. "You don't stop, do you?" Her good eye opened, fixed on him. "If I stop, I sink." He nodded once, no judgment. Then, softer. "My men trust me. They don't know if they trust you yet, but they will if you tell them why this matters so much to you." Her breath caught. The words almost rose. Her brother's name, the mission years ago that had ended in silence, the classified report that had buried him and a dozen others. But the wound still bled too deep to bear. Instead, she whispered, "Because I've already buried one ghost, I won't bury 20 more." Rafe's eyes softened, just enough to show he understood. The alarm klaxon blared then, short and sharp. Contact. The control room filled fast, men snapping to stations. On sonar, a faint ping bloomed. Surface ship, bearing northeast. Small, fast, not cargo, not commercial. "Patrol boat," the operator confirmed. "Vectoring across our path." Rafe leaned over the console. "They're sweeping lanes, looking for someone." Elise's chest tightened. She stepped closer, staring at the glowing mark. "They're looking for us, for the freighter." The captain's voice was grim. "If they've got orders to confirm a kill, they'll know you're alive." Elise's good eye narrowed. "Then we don't let them report it." Rafe glanced at her. "Sub can't engage a patrol boat without authorization." Her lips tightened. "Then we make them blind another way." Silence. Every man in the room stared at her. She leaned forward, her voice a whisper edged in steel. "I know their patterns. They'll cut spotlight sweeps over the waterline, sonar shallow. If you rise under their hull, silent running, you can cut their net. They'll think it's mechanical, and by the time they fix it, we're gone." Rafe blinked at her, then slowly nodded. "You've thought this through." "I thought through drowning," she murmured. "This is easier." The captain gave the order. The Colorado shifted, engines barely a whisper. The sub slid beneath the patrol boat's shadow, unseen, unheard. Elise held her breath as if the ocean still wanted it. The seconds stretched like hours. Then the sonar operator exhaled. "They passed. They didn't see us." Relief rippled, quiet but real. Elise let her hand fall from the table, fingers trembling. Not from fear, from restraint. She knew the war wasn't in the ships or the weapons or the chains. It was in the silence men counted on her to keep. But she wasn't silent anymore. Not now. Not ever again. The Colorado surged north, unseen, carrying with it a woman who had been thrown into the ocean and risen as the tide itself. The mission wasn't survival anymore. It was revelation. And revelation was always the most dangerous weapon. What happens when the truth you've been chasing finally turns and looks back at you? The USS Colorado surfaced under cover of night, its black skin breaking the water like a shadow come up for air. The sky was overcast, stars smothered, the sea rolling in long, low swells. Elise Ward stood on the midship deck, wrapped in a naval jacket too large for her frame, damp hair clinging to her temples. Her leg throbbed, her fever burned, but her eyes were fixed on the horizon. Beyond it lay the Mediterranean, and the staging ground of everything the drive had revealed. The SEALs gathered in the control room, voices low but taut with the weight of choices that had no clean edges. The decrypted fragments were clear now, multiple ships, different flags, converging in secret harbors. Weapons were only part of it. The rest was worse. Smuggling networks tied to names Elise had once saluted, budgets she had once trusted. The rot wasn't outside the system. It was inside its marrow. Rafe stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, gaze hard. Command, calling for an update. We surface comms, we answer. They're already suspicious we've been silent this long. Elise leaned forward, hands flat against the steel. Her voice was hoarse but certain. If we answer, the mission ends. They'll classify it, lock it down, bury it until the world forgets. And if we do, one of the younger SEALs asked, we're ghosts, no support, no home to go back to. Her gaze slid to him, tired but unwavering. Ghosts make better witnesses than corpses. The room went quiet. Rafe studied her face, then the men around him. He saw the fear, he saw the loyalty, and he saw the truth. The mission had shifted. Elise Ward had shifted it. He exhaled slowly. We follow the trail. The operator keyed in coordinates. The Colorado angled north, deeper into hostile waters. Hours bled into one another. Elise sat hunched in the wardroom, a tablet glowing faint blue in her lap. Every page of decrypted data was a wound reopening, names she recognized, initials of programs she'd once briefed. Somewhere in the folds of that data was the reason she'd been marked expendable. Somewhere was the proof that the men who had chained her to a block weren't acting alone. Her vision swam. She blinked hard, focusing on a single line, rendezvous coordinates, not Somalia, not Libya, a private dock off Crete, within reach. She rose, gripping the table for balance, and walked to the control room. They're consolidating, she rasped. One ship already there, two more inbound. If we move now, we catch them together. Rafe's brows furrowed. We're 6 men and one half-dead commander. That's not an intercept, that's suicide. Her lips cracked in something close to a smile. So was swimming. He shook his head, but not in dismissal, in disbelief at her fire. You can't even hold your rifle steady. Elise met his eyes. I don't need to, I just need to tell you where to aim. That ended the argument. The Colorado ghosted closer to Crete, its sonar silent, its crew moving like men carrying a secret too heavy to share. At 200, the periscope revealed the dock, floodlights, stacked containers, men moving in shadows. A freighter sat moored, smaller than the one Elise had escaped but carrying the same falsified aid markings. Rafe studied the image, too many for a straight assault. Elise leaned over, eyes sharp. Then don't assault, cut power, force confusion. In the dark, their numbers mean nothing. The plan formed fast, whispered over headsets, traced on screens. 2 SDVs would insert the SEALs under cover of the dock. Elise insisted on riding with them. Rafe argued. The medic cursed. She didn't yield. They tried to erase me here, she said softly. I won't watch from below while you write the ending. They relented. The sea swallowed them again, colder than before. Elise sat cramped in the SDV, chest tight, breath shallow. Every kick of her legs was fire, but her mind replayed every bolt and ladder she'd memorized on ships just like this. She whispered them over comms, her voice guiding men through shadows. They surfaced under the dock, slipping silent between pylons slick with algae. The SEALs moved first, knives and suppressed rifles carving paths of quiet efficiency. Elise climbed last, every rung of the ladder agony, but she didn't let her body falter. Not here, not now. The dock exploded into chaos. Lights cut out, generators whined, then died. Darkness fell heavy. Shouts in foreign tongues ricocheted. Panic spread. The SEALs moved like phantoms, one target after another vanishing into silence. Elise crouched behind a container, guiding them through comms, her voice calm despite the storm inside her chest. Left flank 3 meters, 2 guards. One's distracted now. Stairwell clear, move. Her body trembled, sweat soaking her collar, but her voice never broke. She wasn't firing rounds. She was orchestrating survival. Then the floodlights snapped back, one by one. They had backup power. Men poured from the freighter, rifles up. Shadows no longer cover but cage. The SEALs dug in, suppressed fire sharp and controlled, but numbers pressed hard. Elise gritted her teeth, pulled herself upright. She saw him then, the contractor from the first freighter, not bound, not beaten, standing on the dock shouting orders. He'd slipped free. Her blood went cold. She raised her rifle, her arms shook, sights wobbling. She forced her breath steady. Pain was noise, noise was useful, she squeezed. The round cracked the night. It struck inches from his foot, splintering wood. He stumbled, eyes finding her across the chaos. Recognition flared. His smirk returned, even here, even now. "You can't kill me," he shouted over the din. "You're too broken." Elise lowered the rifle. Her voice carried, hoarse but sharp. "I don't need to. The tide always comes." At that moment, the Colorado surfaced, black hull rising silent and massive. Its shadow fell over the dock like judgment. The smugglers' men froze, eyes widening at the leviathan that had risen beneath them. The SEALs surged forward in that hesitation, dropping enemies, seizing the bridge of the freighter. Within minutes, the fight was over. Elise stood trembling, rifle slipping from her hands, clattering against the dock. Rafe caught her as her knees gave. Her head fell against his chest, breath ragged. "It's over," he murmured. Her good eye cracked open, faint fire still inside. "No, it's never over, but tonight we won." They hauled the contractor onto the dock, bound once more, his smirk gone for good. Containers were cracked open, more weapons, more chains, more evidence no one could bury now. Dawn broke, streaks of gold tearing across the horizon. Elise sat on the dock's edge, legs dangling over black water. She stared at it, the ocean that had tried to end her, the silence that had almost claimed her name. Her body was ruined, her mission was not. Rafe joined her, quiet. For a long time neither spoke. The sea rolled, indifferent. Finally, Elise whispered, not to him, not to anyone, but to the horizon itself. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." The tide surged below, endless, merciless, eternal. And she sat above it, battered, broken, but unbowed. Not erased. Never erased.